yellow in the streets of Berkeley. This is visual pollution, right? So what I will do is I will now start a regulation that limits the number of taxicabs in Berkeley to 6 units, because I know 6 is the right amount of visual pollution, all right? I'm just joking. So Josh just makes up a number and he needs a new policy, so 6 seems like a good number. So what happens to the long-run supply curve here, right? So if you look at how much these 6 cabs produce at $2, this is how much 6 cabs produce, right? In the market left alone, we don't meet demand here, right? Supply ends here, and we're nowhere near demand, so there's a gap. So in the free economy, we just add a 7th, an 8th, and a 9th cab to get to demand. But now we're short. So how do we expand output now that we've limited entry? Yes, I heard a whisper that I assume was the right answer. I just heard a whisper. I didn't recognize the answer. But we're going to essentially pay these individual cabs more so they drive more, right? So what we're going to do is, now that there's no more entry, the only way to increase output is to have individual cabs drive more. So we're going to wander up these individual cabs, 6 individual cabs, marginal cost curves, which are their individual supply curve. So we're going to aggregate this up across the 6 cabs, and what you get is a supply curve that looks like this. I'm going to put a 6 here for 6 cabs, where this portion right here is simply the horizontal sum of 6 cabs marginal cost curves that you have right here. Right, so this essentially is the same exercise where we aggregated individual firms' short-run supply curves across a fixed number of firms. Right, so this is the new long-run supply curve because we're limiting entry in the long run. So now the supply curve is upward sloping. What does this do to my equilibrium number of cab rides and my equilibrium number of my equilibrium price? Well, price is where supply is equal to demand. Make sure I do this right here. Okay, so this here is now P star. P star. This here is Q2, how many units each individual cab produces, or how many rides each individual cab gives. And this number right here is going to be 6 cabs times Q2 number of rides. So what happened to price? Went up. What happened to the number of rides compared to the perfectly competitive outcome? Went down. Higher prices, lower quantities. Very similar to what we had before. We have a perfectly competitive market with a low price and a high quantity. Now we've got some setting where we're not producing 9Q1, which is my perfectly competitive outcome, and charging $2, but we have a setting where we're producing this number right here and charging more than $2 per cab. So you could say immediately, Max, I get it. I don't even need to do your silly table. This is producing less than the perfectly competitive outcome. If this market is truly perfectly competitive, welfare cannot be maximized. And you would be right, right? Your intuition is already 1. But let's show that using this fancy new keynote table I've added in the bottom here. So what I want to do is I want to compare consumer and producer surplus and total welfare under the 9Q1 outcome to the 6Q2 outcome. Let me label this properly on this particular picture. So this here is Q star, and this here is Q double star, okay? So let me show you what the slices are I need here. I need A, I need B, and I need C. I only need 3 pizza slices here, where A is this big triangle above the new price, below demand to the left of Q double star. B is this thing that looks a little bit like a boat. And C is this little triangle-like looking thing down here. Okay, let's figure out what consumer surplus is under a Q star. It's going to be the difference between demand and price, $2, over the range of production. So it's going to be A, B, C. Producer surplus is the distance between price, $2, and supply, which is flat at $2, over the range of production, Q star. So they get $0 in terms of producer surplus. So producer surplus is 0. Welfare is the sum of the two, A, B, and C. That was easy. How about Q double star, right? Now, to answer your question, let's figure out what the right price is. The right price here now is P star, which is higher than $2. The right quantity is Q double star. So let's figure out consumer surplus. It's the area between the demand curve and the price, which is P star, over the new range of consumption, which is Q double star. So consumer surplus is just A. Producer surplus is going to be the area between price, which is now higher than $2, P star, supply, which is this black curve that then bends upward here into the green curve. So producer surplus is this area, B. And welfare is A, B, and C. No. Obsessed with that, Michael Jackson. A plus B. Actually, Jackson 5, sorry. So, do we learn anything from this? Yeah, we do. We learn a ton from this. What we learn from here is, let's just look at welfare. Before we had A, B, and C in terms of social welfare. Now we just have A and B. We have minus C in deadweight loss. Right? So C here, that's going to be deadweight loss. Who wins? Consumers? Producers win, right? Because consumers had A, B, and C in consumer surplus. Now they have A. They lose B. Oops. They lose B and C. Who gains? Producers. They gain B. So who really likes cab medallions? Cab drivers? No. Owners of cab companies? Yes. Right? Because the rent from the cab medallions accrue to the owners of these cab medallions. So who lobbies for cab medallions? It's owners of cab companies. They like to restrict the number of cabs in the market in order to capture this much producer surplus. Do you think cab medallions are valuable? Are they like $50, $100? Until the arrival of Uber, they were incredibly valuable in New York City. There was actually one that sold for $1 million, right? Single cab medallion. The value of the cab medallions, because of the arrival of Uber and companies like that, has really diminished the value of cab medallions. So this whole market is in total flux and a really interesting industry to study. But this doesn't just work for cabs. This works for anywhere where you have a bunch of identical firms that offer an identical product, where you have free entry and exit. If you limit the number of firms, it will raise price, take away consumer surplus, and generate a bunch of profits for producers, and generate C dollars of deadweight loss. Okay. Here we go. This is a fun one. We're just going to keep on going through example after example after example here, because I think we can learn a lot from these types of examples. Think about a specific tax. Taxes are bad, right? How many times have you heard that? Many times. We need to cut taxes, because taxes are bad. Well, let's think about a specific tax. I'm not going to talk about income taxes. I'm going to talk about specific taxes. And let's see, if you have a perfectly competitive market, what are the implications of a specific tax where you start charging a certain number of dollars per unit in terms of the tax. So demand. So this is demand. Supply. So this market left alone, the perfectly competitive outcome would be Q star, and the perfectly competitive price would be P star. Won't let me draw the star. So just visualize a star next to that P. That's the perfectly competitive outcome. No, won't let me do it. Okay, so now I'm going to charge a specific tax of tau dollars. Right? Tau is an arbitrary number per unit produced. What happens to my supply curve? Shifts up, right? Shifts up by the amount of the tax. So I'm going to draw this precisely here. Roughly, is that right? So after I charge the specific tax, my supply curve looks like this. Okay, and the distance between the two here, that's the specific tax rate. So supply shifts up. What happens to my new price and quantity? Well, my new price is where my new supply curve is equal to demand. So I'm going to call this QP, or let's call this Q double star, let's be consistent. And the new price that consumers pay, I'm going to call this PC. Okay, this is a difficult thing to do, but you can totally do it, all right? I want you to think about something for a second. So after I charge the specific tax, consumers pay PC dollars, right? That's the higher price than before. Does Mr. Smithers, is that his name? Does he get to take home the PC dollars and build his little empire with the PC dollars? Or does he have to do something with part of those PC dollars and hand them to somebody? He has to pay his tax, right? So he collects PC dollars from the consumer, but he has to hand over tau dollars per unit to the government. So he doesn't get to keep these PC dollars, but he only gets to keep PC minus tau dollars, right? What two lines are exactly tau dollars apart on this picture? S prime and S, right? We've just shifted S up by tau dollars, so the vertical distance between these two lines is exactly tau dollars. So at PC, if I want to figure out what the number of dollars is that firm actually gets to take home, I have to subtract tau dollars from the price they collect. And if I subtract tau dollars, the easiest way to do this is just go down by tau dollars. Well, hello there, beautiful, right? Here's what happens, is this beautiful line here, our original supply curve, is exactly tau dollars below the new one. So the price that the producer actually gets to take home, right, in terms of paying his variable and his fixed costs and so on, is this price right here, where this quantity line intersects the old supply curve. So this right here is, I'm going to call this PF for price firm, or whatever, call it PC for price F. Yeah, just call it PF. So what I've got now here is I've got a box, right? I've got a box that has the height of tau dollars. So PC minus PF, that here is exactly, I'll just write it up here, PC minus PF is exactly tau dollars. Okay, so you're already seeing it coming. This is going to hurt. Yeah, this is going to hurt. This is a tough problem, but you'll master this, and it will have huge returns on future exams. So let's figure out what the right set of pizza slices is here in order to figure out what happens to welfare in this perfectly competitive market that is now taxed. So I'm going to show you the minimal number of pizza slices you can use here, but you can write more if you want to. Actually, let's write a few more. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I don't like using I, so I'm going to use J, because I and primes and things get lost on exams. Okay? So I've just cut up my pizza slices in a way that's convenient for me, and I'm going to figure out what consumer and producer surplus are going to be. Let's start with the easy one first. The price I'm interested in is P star and Q star, the market left alone. We know how to do that one pretty easily. So consumer surplus is the area below demand, plus price over the range of consumption, so it's going to be A, B, D, and H. A, B, Z, and H. Producer surplus is going to be the area between price and supply over the range of production, so it's going to be C, D, E, F, J. TR stands for tax revenue, right? Right now we're not collecting taxes, so the government doesn't get any tax revenue, so that one's going to be 0. So total welfare is going to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J. I know it would be much easier to write A through J, but don't do it. You will lose points, okay? So now comes the hard part. What's consumer surplus after the tax? So it's going to be the difference between demand and the price that the consumer pays. So I'm going to pick on you all the time because you asked the best question today, so we'll keep on going, right? So this is the price that consumers pay. This is demand, and this is going to be the equilibrium quantity. So this is the relevant quantity. This is the price that consumers pay. This is their demand curve. So consumer surplus is now going to be A. Here comes the hard part for producers, right? So producers' private marginal cost and their actual supply curve is their old supply curve, right? This is what it costs them to actually go ahead and produce Q double star units, which is the number of units they produce. The price they get to take home to actually pay, their workers and their fixed costs and so on is not PC, but it is the price, PF, that they actually get to take home. So producer surplus is going to be the area between PF, supply, over the range of production, so it's going to be D and E. I'll show you another way to do this in a second. There's another area that has the exact same area that you could use as well, but I like this way because this is intuitive, because it gives me the price that producers actually get and their private costs here. Now, what about B, G, C, and F? Well, for each unit produced, Q double star, the government gets tau dollars. The height of this box here is tau, because that's the difference between consumer price and the price that firms get, and the width of this box right here is Q double star. So the area of this box right here is the tax rate per unit times the number of units produced. That's total tax revenue for the government, right? So tax revenue is going to be number of dollars per unit times units produced, so B plus C plus B plus F. C plus C plus B plus F. So total welfare is going to be A plus whatever the producers have, D plus E. Now, Max, here's a philosophical question for you. Government revenue, should we count that as welfare or not? Well, does the government dig a giant hole somewhere in the middle of Washington, throw that stuff in there, and burn it? Even though you're told that that's the case, that's actually not what they do, right? What do we do with tax revenue? We spend it. National defense. We spend very little of it on public education. And then we spend a lot of it on other stuff, transfer payments, lots of good stuff. You know, National Endowment of the Arts gets like $3 of tax revenue. So that's a whole other discussion to have here. But this is welfare that the government takes out of this particular market, but it redistributes it amongst the citizens in other markets, right? So what we're doing is we're going to count this tax revenue as welfare. It's taken out of this market, but since we the people, right? We are the people. The government is us, an elected representation of us. This chunk here counts as welfare in these models. So total welfare after the tax is A, D, E, B, C, G, and F. So what do you lose? I know what you lose because I can do algebra. You lose minus H and minus J. So deadweight loss here is this little triangle right here. Consumers lose a lot of surplus, B, G, H. Producers lose C, F, J. But B and C and G and F are gained, recaptured consumer and producer surplus by the government that it redistributes in other ways. So the only thing that's lost here is H and J. This seemed obvious while I did it. Trust me, if you sit down with your pen and pencil and you try and redo this again, it'll be confusing. So between now and next time, try and convince yourself if you force the market to produce more than the perfectly competitive outcome, you lower welfare, and redo this one, all right? I have to run. If you have questions, come see me in office hours, unless you're already on your way.